Hi, my name is Dale Aadland. A few months ago I shot a Tipi video here on the Lake Traverse Reservation, and I promised you that I'd show you how to do a few extra things during that video that we just didn't have time to do, and so today is a good time to answer some of those questions and kind of clear up some of those gray areas that I left behind. It's actually 10 below out here today, 25 below Celsius. Luckily we don't have any wind, but we have some snow coming down. And one of the things we talked about during the last video was I was going to explain my markings, why I painted the teepee this way. And oh, by the way, that other teepee back there is my wife's teepee, and she pretty much lives in that teepee. And we're going to get to that teepee in probably a third video. But for now, let me just get out a little broom, and I'm going to dust off the teepee and explain why I painted some of the marks and the significance of the painting behind this teepee. Some tribes, the only teepees that were painted were called medicine teepees. So I'm going to explain some of the markings and some of the designs behind this. So I'm going to grab a little broom and dust this off. Okay, right here at the bottom of the teepee, you'll notice these black marks, like this, these kind of black humps. And what those represent are hills. And that's called the hill design. And since we live here right at the bottom of these foothills, these are called the Coteau Hills, and that's the reasoning behind these hills that go around the whole teepee. And then within these hills, you'll notice these double yellow dots. And if you count every dot, there's 80 of them. But there's 40 pairs. And I was 40 years old when I made this teepee. So that's why there are 40 dots. And then I don't know if the camera can see this or not, but if you come closer, you'll see these footprints here. And these are footprints of my granddaughters. And her name is Lily, and this was when she was very young. And then we did them again when she was older, and you can see her feet got bigger here. So there's her big feet, maybe when she's about 5 years old, and she was probably 3 years old here. And then there's goose tracks going up all around this teepee. And when I was painting it, a goose walked through the black paint, and 2 or 3 geese actually, and they walked around the teepee. And then if you come back here, there's some dog footprints. And the dog walked through the red part while I was painting it. redness of it, or this rusty color, this represents a natural color that we have that occurs here. There's a lot of iron in the ground here, and it's not like iron ore, but it's like just iron dust or something. Like water has a lot of iron in it, and so that's the significance of that rusty color. Then you'll notice right here there's like a crescent moon, a red moon, and it starts back here and it goes around and comes up, and that's the symbol of the crescent moon is for the Middle Eastern countries that I visited. Instead of having a red cross on all their vehicles, they have a crescent moon. And so that's what that's about. And then right here, you'll notice a star that's painted, and that's the planet Venus, and there's another tiny one that's painted right next to it, and I call that Venus' sun, S-O-N. And I used to stare at Venus a lot and just contemplate about people and certain people back home and stuff, and so I had a lot of nights just wondering and thinking and contemplating about Venus and the planet. It's so bright sometimes when you're there. And then right here on this little flat here, you'll notice this thing that looks like a double cross. But what that is a geometric design of a dragonfly. And the dragonfly is a symbol of protection. And so I painted that on the teepee for protection. And there's one on the other side of this flat too, identical. And it's also whenever I see a dragonfly, I'm always reminded of, certain people, and it brings back good memories of those people. And I guess I could explain these. A lot of teepees you won't see this little flat here, but it's kind of a hybrid edition. The Cheyenne are friends to these natives that lived here, and Cheyenne use these predominantly, and what it does is it helps when it rains, and rain is running down these smoke flaps. Instead of rain going into the teepee, the rain accumulates at the bottom of this little flap, and then it runs down the outside of the teepee instead of going down in the teepee. Before we go in and talk about the liner, there's one design we forgot to talk about, and that is the door. And there's a cross on the door. And the reason for the cross is because of our family's Christian association or Christian affiliation. And so that's why we have a red cross on the door. I'm also interested in the Teutonic Knights and the Knights Templar, and so that's another reason for that cross symbol that's on the door. And so we can go on in now and talk about the liner. Okay, we can talk about the liner a little bit now. What the liner is this cloth you see around surrounding the whole teepee, and the camera person did record, just kind of shot around and got a shot of the whole teepee and all of the liner. I've made my liner out of some material that you would call like bed sheet material. And the reason for that is there's some logic behind that. Your liner doesn't have to be very heavy material. What it has to be is a tight woven material. During the military, I had to take a winter survival course, and all our tents for the survival course and our clothing and everything was just made from a tight woven material. That's what's important, so it don't let the wind in. You could have a 100-pound piece of canvas here with open weave, and if it lets the wind in, it isn't going to do you any good. But the reason sheets do so well is because that's why we use them on our bed, is because it keeps our body heat in next to us. They keep us warm. That's why we use bed sheets. And so I've used similar material to make this liner, just similar to bed sheets. I cut out on the bottom of the bed sheets, I cut out 42 inches, and then at the top about 36 inches. And I've done that with each one, and I've sewed the wider sections together at the bottom, and then the narrow sections are at the top. And then also, I don't sandbag this liner down because I don't want it to rot under the sandbags. What I do is I use these, it's like a nail with a washer on the top. In emergencies, I've seen people use bottle caps and nails. And what we do is, the liner is also made in 3 sections. So I got a section here, a section in the back, and then a section here. And then this section too also can be pulled out and go across the door. And the reason why it's in 3 sections too, if it gets soiled and dirty, I can just throw them in the wash machine, put Tide and bleach in there, whatever, and they're white again. And but to put the liner in, what I do is at first I stake down each of the 42-inch widths, just with one of these every 42 inches. And I actually put the liner somewhat out of the teepee itself. Let's see here. Wow. And then of course on this one I added these side strings to tie it to the door pole. So at the bottom here I have one of these poking down in the ground, and then I stretch it tight and poke another one in the ground, and stretch it tight, poke another one in the ground. And that way it'll keep critters out. We had a skunk in our teepee one time, and he had to use the door. He couldn't get through underneath the liner. Then on this section here, I just tie bow ties to the door pole, and then once I got it staked down all the way around the bottom, I just take a rope, a 1/4 inch Sicily rope. Of course, Sicily is my favorite rope, and I'll tie it off, and I'll go around the teepee. And when I go behind each pole. I don't go around the pole like some people recommend, because I've found out what happens when you go around, when you wrap this rope around the pole and it rains. You have rain that'll run down the pole, and when it hits that rope, it'll drip like this. But when you have it this way, rain will come down the pole. Sure, it's going to hit the liner, but what it does is it just soaks in, and then it'll go down to the ground, and you won't have it dripping on you. It'll soak into the liner and go down to the ground, and that's okay. If it stains the liner, if you have dirty poles or something, it stains the liner, you don't have to worry about it because you can throw the liner in the wash machine and clean it up. And so another thing, this rope, when I'm putting it around and tying these as I go around, I just tie bow ties, and I don't have to have the rope necessarily tight right away, meaning, you know, this rope here doesn't have to be tight right away. But then by the time I get to this side, then I will tighten it up, and I'll make sure that I have the liner nice and tight, and so it looks nice and trim and tight, and it isn't baggy and saggy. And you know, I will also go along with clothespins and kind of pick up some of this slack if there's some bagginess in it or something. And you might be saying, well, you're not getting any air that way, but that's not true. I've had a roaring fire here in this stove, or when I have open fires, and I've put my hand up here, and I will not feel any breeze through the tight woven material. But when I put my hand right up here, I'm getting plenty of air. And then the doorway itself is allowing plenty of air, if not too much air, enough for the fire. So that issue about air and draft, you don't have to worry about it with this liner. And I don't know, you got any other questions about the liner or anything, or have I summed that up pretty good? Just, you know, it's staked down with these things, and these are really actually pretty hard to pull out of the ground, because if you look at this closely, it's got like a twist to it, this nail with this washer on it. And right now, the way the ground is so frozen with it being so cold out, I couldn't even pull them out of the ground. And when I was setting up the teepee, I had to pound them in with a hammer. And so, you know, that's good too. And I just like it better than having to, I've seen liners where you have to tie them to the bottom of the pole. Well, you got to be so fussy about where your pole is every time, and you know, you got to make sure, well, I got to have it here 2 inches over, otherwise I can't tie it. Another thing, I don't bother with painting those designs on there, because you have to adjust the pole to match up those designs too. It's really kind of frivolous. And I guess I'll talk about some of the other things in the teepee here that I do. Well, the stove here. This is an old Army stove. I used these a lot when I was in the Army. I believe they're developed in the, you know, probably the 1950s or even earlier. I know they had them during the Korean War, and they put out a tremendous amount of heat. And I just run the stovepipe up about this high. It's just to keep the smoke out of our eyes while we're talking and doing video and stuff. And it's really convenient. Just, you know, and like I said, when we moved to this area, you're just cleaning up deadfall, and so I'm just throwing in some deadfall pieces. And here's a piece of ash that was deadfall and old, and we're cleaning up the ground, and we'll get a nice blaze going. And I've had this stove just cherry red many times, and I've slept out here when it has been this cold. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how I prepare when I'm going to sleep. And that's something else I learned while I was in the military, was just the proper way you should prepare your bed, I guess. And I'll show you here. Of course, I have a big buffalo robe, and I sleep under that. But then under the buffalo robe here, I have what's called a Chernobyl blanket. It's a Russian blanket. And then I have my extreme cold weather goose down fiberfill army sleeping bag. It's extreme cold. And then again, that's another cloth that's a real tight weave. And then under here, I have my pad. And while I was in that, doing the military training, there was one soldier that did not bring his pad. And he was very sorry he did not bring his pad. And it almost ended up into being a fight over a pad like this. Because we had to sleep on the ground, and it was 20 below zero for a good week straight. And we slept in Arctic tents, and we slept in the ground. And sleeping on the ground with insulation like this is better than sleeping on a cot. You sleep on a cot, it's going to be like a convection. It's just going to suck the heat out of you. The ground does work as a sort of an insulator. And if you have the pad and the blankets and a good sleeping bag and, like I say, a buffalo robe, you'll do just fine. I'll talk about a few of the other things. Got a buckskin shirt hanging. Fix that. Pound that down. And I made that shirt about 20 years ago. And it was from 3 deer that were killed right in this vicinity. And I brain tanned it. There's a bullet hole. My wife did the beadwork. And it's very soft. And also when I smoked it, you'll notice some marks like across here. And I put some pieces of tape, and then I smoked it. And so that's why those marks are there. I don't know if you can see them on the back too well. Can't really see those marks anymore on the back too well. But it's brain tan buckskin. It's also a brain tan buffalo hide, and I want to show you how soft the buffalo hide is. And the buffalo hide is just like a big blanket, and it's very soft, and it's really warm. And of course the dog enjoys sleeping on all this stuff too. And she's sleeping on my capote right now. And then I have some other things like this is a basswood basket. It's made out of basswood slits. And then down here I have some of my pipes for when I'm just smoking and enjoying and meditating and thinking about people. And there's a buffalo skull, and here's some tobacco and some knick-knack, and here's a medicine bundle, and this was a gift from a friend. This is Scandinavian in origin, and that's what I am. And then we have a drum here, and over there's a buffalo box, and then more backrest, and then that is a old Cherokee basket, and my wife uses it to keep some of her sewing stuff in. And it's just a very old basket, and she keeps things like that in there. And got some cooking utensils over there, and also you'll notice these like Dutch ovens down here, different styles. But I don't do too much cooking in here. I will make coffee on the stove and stuff, but my wife does the cooking, and she does that in her Tipi, and she has a whole supply of Dutch ovenware too, and the grill, and she has a number of things that I just don't have, and we'll discuss that in a video with my wife sometime in the future too. Okay, right here in this section you see a lot of things, and you see these ceremonial items, and then you see a lot of tools and such too. And the reason the reason why everything is here is because when it's dark and you need a tomahawk to split some wood, and here's the tomahawk right here. You know where it's at. You just find it. Or if you find a bigger log that needs to be split, here's the axe. Also, here's my stone hammer again, and then here is a little war club, and then again we have things like, I'll keep my matches here, I'll keep extra candles here, tobacco here, just things where I know they have to be. I keep them here in this general area. It just kind of makes sense, and after you camp long enough, these things just kind of become habit, and I don't talk about it, and it's just kind of habit. And the buffalo skull is just a nice ceremonial piece, and then it's nice for resting things on. Another place where I do keep things for the teepee and accessories for the teepee is over here. I have this pouch that's made, and it's always strung up in this spot, and this in here we keep our extra lacing pins, extra clothespins, maybe this is a poker for the fire, a small poker, matches, flint and steel if we do that, needles and thread if we need to patch. And so this is kind of another necessity spot where things are at. And since I threw some wood in here, it's starting to get a little smoky, so what I'll do is let's go outside, and I'll demonstrate how I move the smoke flaps, and just how I go about doing that. Okay, we're out here now, and I'm going to show you how to adjust these smoke flaps. Like right now, if you notice, we don't have a lot of wind. If you can see the red flags up there on top of the teepee poles, they're very still. They're not blowing much at all. They are moving a little bit. But if you look at the flaps themselves, they're kind of creating a big opening, almost like a funnel, because the wind is directly from the east. And so it's blowing. We got a draft going down in there, and that's why it was getting a little smoky. As you can see, that area does get real smoky. You can see the rope up there. And so let me show you how I would adjust that. I can tell by looking at the flags at the top that our wind is kind of from the southeast. So the best way I've had it described to me is, if you're going to put your smoke flaps up, just imagine if you were in a high wind, what you would do with your collar if you were facing the wind. If you were facing the wind and the wind was coming from this direction, you would just naturally grab your collar and you would put this collar up like this to protect yourself. So that's what you want to do when the wind is blowing. So I'm going to go back behind the teepee, and I'm going to move that teepee pole so that it makes that collar or that smoke flap do this. And I'll just do that right now. And then to allow the smoke some more area so it can escape, I'm going to take the other collar and I'm going to lower that one down. So I sort of have a shield up here blocking the wind this way, and then this one will be down. So I'm going to move this one down. So there, now we would have our smoke rolling out of there in that just that fashion. Now if it was the opposite way, I would just reverse it. I would put this one up and that one down. And then when it's raining and you really have a lot of rain coming down, I'll demonstrate what we do there. Or if you have hurricane type winds, what you can do. Let's say the wind was from the north. So I'm going to button this up real tight so no rain will get in here and they won't catch the wind. So to button it up real tight, move this all the way over here. Close that off like that. Then I'll take this other one and close it over this one. Now this would still catch wind, you see. So we just take this down. Gotta undo this. And then I would just tie these ropes off to like that peg you see sitting there. So I just, and that way no north wind would catch these. Now if it was a south wind, I would just reverse the process, because I wouldn't, if it was a south wind, I wouldn't want this one catching so much wind. But we better open it up because I have a fire going in there.
As you're setting up, is there any particular reason for the direction the door is facing? And any particular direction the teepee is facing when setting up?
I know we mentioned that in the last video. I wasn't very clear on that. All I said was we always face the door east. And that's the way I was taught, that the teepee door always has to face east. And there's several logical reasons behind that. But the main logical reason is because here where we live, we have prevailing west winds. And so we wouldn't want to face our door west because the teepee would catch a lot of wind then. And this way, the teepee is steeper up the back. It's really aerodynamic, cone shape. That's why they're so good in the wind and so tough in the wind. But that's the main reason why we always face our doors to the east. And in the old times, the whole camp, the door would be faced to the east. And even the whole camp would face east. And there would be an opening from the east. And another reason is, the sun comes up in the east, and in the morning time, it's just beautiful to see that sunrise, and you can see it through the doorway. The liner kind of blocks out the rest of it, so it's a beautiful morning when you can see the sun come up from the east. So that's why we always put the door to the east.
In your last video, you mentioned you tied the rope 4 times. Is there a specific reason for that?
Right. The anchor rope that we use up there, we always wrap that 4 times. And that's something else I didn't explain why we do that. It's wrapped 4 times for the 4 directions. And so to me it would just almost seem like bad luck if I did not go around 4 times and I anchored it only going around once or going around twice. We go around 4 times because of the 4 directions. And so that looks like I'll open that up so you can just see that rope again. There's our rope, that's our anchor rope that's wrapped around there 4 times. And I also want to mention too about the use of the stove. I really enjoy using the stove. Open fires are great, and tonight maybe I'll create an open fire in there. I love the glow of the teepee and the open fire, but they just get really smoky when you're trying to talk and have family time and just socialize. It gets pretty smoky sometimes. To keep the smoke down, best thing to do is have someone designated to be the fire watcher, and they just keep adding very dry deadfall and just keep the flame at its maximum and try to keep the smoke down. But if you throw any logs on that have any size to them, they're going to smoke up. So that way, that's why I use a stove, because I like to throw some logs in and just go about my business and read or do something else. And natives use stoves quite early too. I hate to mention this photograph, but the photograph of Bigfoot's camp, in the background of some of those teepees, you'll notice that there were Sibley stoves being used. And what a Sibley stove is they were made in the 1860s, and all it is like a upside down tin ice cream cone. It doesn't have a bottom. It has a hole in the top and a little door to throw coal or wood in. But some natives did go to using those stoves as soon as they could get them. So I don't have an objection with using a stove.